Now, again, out of 26 teams, only 10 provided the correct answer, and we had other answers from the alternator was bad, the fuse was bad, the switch was bad. It would have taken a lot of time and a lot of extra money if somebody had troubleshot my aircraft to that extent. Now, we also put another fairly easy one at the end, because typically the two in the middle, the open fuse and the K2 relay and the multi-engine, admittedly, they were a little difficult. You had to know what you were doing to figure those out. Those that made it to the fourth one, it was very easy. It was an emergency transformer rectifier. It's the part that changes your emergency AC power to DC power. Was bad. Had they measured in, they would have gotten AC. If they measured out, they would have read 0. We even went to the trouble of putting together an operational guide. So if they would have just went through the ops check, they would have nailed it. And we did it on purpose. We wanted something at the end that was relatively easy to help with time. Well, as you can see, out of 17 teams that made it that far, only 2 of them were able to guess correctly. Or not guess, but correctly troubleshoot. Here are your commercial guys. These are the guys that you're flying with every day. Not a real good success rate on the GA low battery. I mean, they were changing things out that were crazy, 57%. And those that made it to the end, to that emergency TR, now keep in mind, general aviation usually does not have an emergency TR. All right, so for the students, for the general aviation guys, we understood that. All commercial aircraft have an emergency system, and only 14% of them, one team was able to do that correctly.
That was Southwest, you said?
Now, Southwest guy.
That was.
Yeah, Southwest was the one that correctly identified this. Now, we had a general aviation gentleman who absolutely dominated. He was actually the best, and which was really surprising because some of the ones in the middle were pretty difficult. All right, we also do, everybody familiar with Skills USA? We also do the Skills USA electronics competition in June. So the numbers you're about to get are fresh. I mean, right from the last week of June. Our element of the competition of the electronics technology piece, we have 5 events. We have a customer service exam, we have a written electronics exam, we have a soldering practical, a circuit construction practical, and a troubleshooting practical. So it's a lot of fun, and watching these kids, and I call them kids, but I got to tell you, in the post-secondary, the ages ranged all the way up to 50 years old. Because there were a number that made it to national skills that had gone back to school to learn new skills. And we see a lot of that in this economy, and you probably do too in your college. Now keep in mind, this really, yes?
I'd like to hear more about the customer service exam and what's in it and what you're measuring after you have a chance to answer.
All right, I'll just go right down. The electronics technician electrician exam is the ISET, the International Society of Certified Electronics Technicians. It's their written exam. Now, they usually give 2 hours, we gave an hour. We're not looking for, what we're looking for is ranking. So we want the students or the competitors to show us what they know in the quickest time possible. This was the completion results. 46%, the average score for the secondary was 46%. The average score for the post-secondary was 57%. Now there's math included on here. There's quite a bit of math on this. So what we conclude is that by the time you're a post-secondary student, you probably have more math skills, and that's what was the difference between here. The customer service exam is the Electronics Technician Association International Customer Service, their CS exam. In fact, on either one of these 2 written exams, if you had a passing grade, they gave you the certification for free. So that's kind of an incentive for the competitors. You can see right here they did fairly well. And we didn't give them half of the time. Well, I guess we gave them half of the time that they normally would have been allotted to take this exam. Soldering project was the only area.
What kinds of questions do they ask on about customer service?
If you go to the ETAI website, they have samples. ETA-I.org, I believe it is. And they'll have samples. But the questions were putting students in different situations with customers, and they had to select the best response.
Okay.
And there were, in this particular case, I believe 50 questions, and they had 45 minutes to complete 50 questions. So they did pretty good on that, especially under the time crunch. And this is kind of reversed. Customer service was actually the first element that they took. So a little nerves probably, they've settled down fairly quickly. Soldering project was the only area where the high school group did better than the post-secondary group. And we, well, especially, you're right. Now we were attributing it not to eyesight, but that's very good. A lot of high school programs teach soldering, and because it's inexpensive to do, and they just don't have the budgets that the post-secondary schools do. So the students do a lot more soldering, a lot more of those kinds of projects. Circuit construction, the last element of the day. Yes, sir?
What standard did you use on soldering? Anything, or is
we use the NASA standard. It's the J
standard?
Yes. And finally, circuit construction, that was the last element of the day. Those scores probably reflect less than what they could have done, because I got to tell you, after 2 days of pretty intense electronics examination, they were a bit tired at this point. But they still scored fairly well. Troubleshooting, on the other hand, across the board, was pretty distant. What we do is we lay out a circuit, and actually they get to play with it the day before. They get to take the tech manuals home with them in the evening, and when they come back for the next day, it's the first thing they do, it's the second thing they do on the second day. And it's 23 different discrepancies, one at a time. The first thing they have to do is there a discrepancy, or is it operating correctly? Yes or no, points for that. And then they go down to the block level, and they go down to the component level. The component level gives them some extra points. So as you can see by all of these results, they are really good at customer service. They have to be, because 3 out of 4 times they're going to misdiagnose the customer's problem. So, what does that mean? We did a lot of soul searching. We did a lot of looking, because AMTs, these are people that are seasoned veterans. And students, these are students coming, or people that are coming right out of a program. They should be freshest. They weren't looking at the process from a systems perspective. Most of them, especially on the AMT, we could easily determine they were going down to what the pilot wrote up and not really stepping back to look at the system and to determine, did that make any sense? And one of the discrepancies, the second one on the general aviation, didn't make sense. Had they gone through the operational check, a very simple operational check, they would have saw what the pilot saw, but as a mechanic they would have understood what was going on. So with this in mind, NIDA has been holding a number of summits. And if you're interested in attending our next summit, please let us know. We bring everyone down into NIDA. We've held 4 of them thus far. We bring industry, military, and education together, and we try to determine what's going on. A, we're asking them to verify our results, without telling them what our results are. That's what we're looking for. And B, if we do have a problem, what can we do to fix this? Now we have a number of groups coming in. We had Northrop Grumman has been there, Rockwell Collins, Boeing, NASA has been to them. Education, we've had technology tech centers. We've had Idaho State University, Maryland Community College. We've had a number of groups coming in. Military, all the services with the exception of the Coast Guard, which is, I'm retired Coast Guard. Just can't get those guys to take time. Anyway, they all came together, and one of the biggest issues in industry was no fault found rates. No fault found is when an aircraft comes in or a system comes in and the technician cannot find a fault with it, so they go ahead and they sign it off. No fault found, or they change something, check next flight, check next system. When you're on the ground and your automotive mechanic can't find a problem and sends you back out, not a real big issue. If the car stalls, you pull over to the side of the road. When you're in the air, when you're in space, when you're in surgery and the thing fails, People's lives depend on it. And we need to instill that in our students. Now this 50% of pilot reported discrepancies going unfound was from Sorensen. Sorensen in 2003 did a study. He's the president of Synaptics, a company that builds test equipment, digital test equipment. And one of the things that they had found was that a problem inherent in a lot of sophisticated systems now is digital averaging. Test equipment was set up not really to factor in digital averaging. Now what is digital averaging? If you're flying along in an Airbus, it's fly-by-wire. There's no direct link from what the pilot is holding to all of those surfaces that are flying. And I don't mean to scare you. Go home. I mean, it works fine. However,
all of us flying should probably consider the bus.
It's good systems, solid systems, backup systems to backup systems. However, when they start experiencing difficulties because of digital averaging, and they put digital averaging purposely into flight computers, otherwise every little piece of noise would seem like an input, and the plane would be all over the air trying to correct. So they average, they take different digital averages, and test equipment up until recently couldn't pick that up. So a pilot would come back and say, for instance, yaw channel's not working well, or kicks in the yaw channel, and they would put the test equipment on it and it would spit out saying there's no problem, there's no problem, there's no problem. No, and there wasn't a problem as far as the test equipment was concerned. So that's it. That was a big issue. Now, aviation is really the only group that tracks well. Well, I take that back. The atomic industry, nuclear power, they track their discrepancies well also, they just don't release them. Aviation, they do a good job. A typical airline with 200 aircraft spends $100,000 per aircraft per year on no fault found. And we did a lot of research into the military, and their numbers are higher than that. No fault found is dangerous. One, it's time consuming, but two, it makes people very uncomfortable. Those in the know, pilots taking off on an aircraft that was signed off no fault found are not real comfortable taking off on an aircraft that was no fault found. The guy that signs it off, they don't like to sign off discrepancies that they haven't fixed. Technicians are very proud of their work. They sometimes just don't have the time to do anything more than sign it off that way. And also, we talked a little bit about this at the opening seminar, the shotgun maintenance, where technicians are oftentimes dumbed down or appear to be dumbed down, and manuals are written that way. If this comes back as the discrepancy, change X. If that doesn't work, next flight, change Y. If this comes back from on a shipboard and you didn't fix it with X, go to Y. There are a lot of built-in test equipment, BITE systems, B-I-T-E, that automatically tell you to change X. And if that doesn't fix it, change Y. Now, a lot of these are based on cheapest component, but what's happening is things are getting changed that don't need to be changed. So, the summit recommended we don't need to troubleshoot to the component level anymore. No need to train our students to go to the component level. Let's go to the line replaceable unit, which is the black box, LRU. If they could at least determine the correct black box to change, worth millions of dollars ahead, and you wouldn't be paying for your luggage. These other things were also, but what was real interesting was this last piece, and that was systems thinking. We need a more systematic approach to troubleshooting. Now, systems, we've always learned how to work on systems. When I went to school, they taught you how to work on a system. Sometimes I really didn't know how the system worked, and oftentimes I didn't know how that system related to others until I had enough experience in the field. We need to change that. We need to start allowing, and this was the summits. It's a collaboration of all of their work, but this is what they were saying. They need to know how systems interact with other systems. Well, that's kind of difficult if we're teaching the traditional way.